The year 2014 marked a turning point in Russia-Ukraine relations with the annexation of Crimea by Russia. Pro-Russian separatists, backed by Moscow, seized parts of Donetsk and Luhansk, igniting a protracted war in Donbas. Despite multiple ceasefire agreements, the conflict festered for years, claiming thousands of lives and displacing millions. The annexation demonstrated Russia's willingness to use military force and disregard international norms. This event cast a long shadow over the region, fueling mistrust and setting the stage for the wider conflict in 2022. The international community's slow reaction emboldened Putin to further expand Russia's influence. Consequently, on February 24, 2022, Russian forces launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, marking a dramatic escalation of the conflict. Russian troops targeted key cities, including Kiev, but faced fierce Ukrainian resistance and logistical challenges. Western nations imposed crippling sanctions on Russia, and military aid poured into Ukraine from NATO countries. The invasion shattered the post-Cold War order and raised profound questions about the future of international relations. The conflict has had devastating humanitarian consequences, displacing millions of Ukrainians and causing widespread suffering. The roots of the Russia-Ukraine war are complex, stemming from historical grievances, geopolitical ambitions, and security concerns. Russia's historical and cultural ties to Ukraine fuel its sense of entitlement and desire to maintain influence. NATO's eastward expansion is viewed by Russia as a direct threat to its security interests. Ukraine's westward shift since the 2014 Euromaidan protests further fueled tensions. The conflict in Donbas, ignited in 2014, provided Russia with a pretext for military intervention. Moscow's support for separatist groups in eastern Ukraine exacerbated tensions and created a humanitarian crisis. Understanding these factors is crucial to comprehending the conflict's trajectory and potential for resolution. A Chronicle of Conflict, Key Events in the Russia-Ukraine War, 2022 to 2025. 2022, February 24. Russia launches a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, targeting major cities, including Kiev. March to April, Ukrainian forces halt the Russian advance on Kiev. Evidence of Russian war crimes sparks international outrage. May to August, Russia focuses on eastern Ukraine, capturing Severodonetsk. Ukraine receives advanced Western weaponry. September to December, Ukraine launches successful counteroffensives in Kharkiv and Kherson. Russia retaliates with missile strikes. 2023, January to June. Fighting intensifies in Donbas, particularly around Bakhmut. The Wagner Group plays a prominent role. June to December. The Wagner Group stages a mutiny, exposing internal divisions within Russia. The conflict enters a stalemate. 2024, January to December. Diplomatic efforts falter. Ukraine faces ammunition shortages while Russia makes incremental gains. 2025, January to March. The U.S. imposes additional sanctions on Russia. Ceasefire talks resume in Saudi Arabia with intervention from U.S. The global stage international actors and their roles in the conflict. The Russia-Ukraine war has drawn in a complex web of international actors, each with its own interests and motivations. Supporting Ukraine, the United States, Ukraine's most steadfast ally, providing billions in military aid and diplomatic support. European Union and NATO, significant military, financial, and humanitarian assistance, reinvigorating NATO's sense of purpose. Turkey supplied Ukraine with Bayraktar TB2 drones and facilitated grain deals. Supporting Russia, Belarus provided logistical support for the invasion, allowing Russian forces to use its territory. Iran and North Korea supplied Russia with weapons and ammunition, highlighting Russia's reliance on rogue regimes. A glimmer of hope? Ceasefire talks and the uncertain path to peace. Recent developments in ceasefire talks offer a fragile hope for peace in Ukraine. The US and Ukraine have reached a tentative agreement during talks mediated by Saudi Arabia. However, the path to lasting peace remains fraught with obstacles, including enforcement mechanisms and military presence in Kursk. The international community is closely watching Putin's next moves and potential back-channel negotiations. The lack of transparency and deep-seated mistrust make it challenging to assess the potential for success. A world on edge. The unresolved conflict and its global implications. The The Russia-Ukraine war, now in its third year, remains locked in a stalemate with profound global implications. The conflict has reshaped geopolitical alliances, exacerbated tensions, and fueled uncertainty about the future. Russia's violation of Ukraine's sovereignty challenges the rules-based international order. The war has impacted global cooperation on issues like climate change, arms control, and cybersecurity. Economic fallout includes rising inflation, energy insecurity, and supply chain disruptions. The conflict underscores the urgent need for diplomacy and international cooperation. Until a lasting peace is achieved, the world will continue to grapple with the conflict's far-reaching consequences. Following interventionist measures from the U.S. since the Trump administration, American and Ukrainian officials met in Saudi Arabia, and after negotiations with the U.S., Ukraine agreed to a 30-day ceasefire in March 2025. They then took the deal to Moscow, hoping to secure Vladimir Putin's approval. However, rather than giving a clear yes or no, Putin responded with more questions. With 15 years in the KGB and 25 years ruling Russia, Putin has mastered the art of timing, knowing when to commit, when to stall, and when to reject. He is putting that experience to use now, while the world waited for his decision, expecting either an acceptance or rejection of the truce. He introduced a third option: ambiguity. He stated that he supports a ceasefire in principle but raised concerns about its enforcement. Who would oversee and monitor the truce? What happens after it ends? What will be the truce period used for? He raised concerns regarding the potential advantage Ukraine could gain from the truce. Putin fears that a pause in fighting could allow Ukraine to regroup, mobilize more troops, and receive additional Western weapons, strengthening its military position. He is seeking answers from the U.S. before making a final decision. Russia's cautious stance reflects its broader strategic approach. In response, the U.S. imposed additional sanctions on Moscow. Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, met with Russian officials, with Trump calling Putin's response a step in the right direction, but not a firm commitment. He warned that if Russia does not fully embrace the ceasefire, the U.S. is prepared to escalate economic pressure.